Hi greets viewers, see you on this channel again. In this episode, we will investigate the mysterious nature of sugar, also known as the sweetest killer. This narrative begins with a story told by a teacher many years ago. It was a biochemistry instructor who told a story about a ghost many years ago. According to him, refined sugar, also known as white crystal sugar, is present in foods and is significantly more dangerous than alcohol. Will enter the brain, which will subsequently cause nausea, blurred vision, and a feeling of being drugged. At that point, your brain will immediately send a message to your stomach telling you to stop swallowing the poison and will stimulate the mechanism that causes nausea, causing you to vomit up the poison. Sugar is not comparable to alcohol in terms of its qualities and characteristics. It is not possible for it to enter the brain. Sugar, on the other hand, can fool the brain. It will relay the message to the brain. When there is a sudden increase in blood sugar, the body is given the signal to consume as much as it wants without feeling uncomfortable. When confronted with rapidly rising blood sugar, the body also loses control, at which point insulin will instantly begin to exert significant effort to bring down the body's blood sugar. Beginning to feel weary while sugar continues to deceive the brain into thinking it needs more adrenaline. This causes the brain to become aroused once more, which causes a surge in blood sugar. When the pancreatic islets become uncontrolled and continue to repeat in this manner, you will notice that youngsters are sobbing and requesting for sweets such as sugar candies. This is due to the fact that the brain has not yet finished developing, making it incapable of controlling irregular emotional shifts. Meanwhile, can grown-ups maintain their composure in the face of unpredictability? If you are intrigued, you can give it a shot yourself. If you abstain from sugar in the form of sweet meals for a period of 14 days, you will undoubtedly experience the agony of hunger and thirst, just like a vampire would. At that point, the liver will be the final thing that will come out to overcome it. Roughly 80% of alcohol seeps into the liver in order to cleanse poisons and overcome potentially dangerous threats. In the meantime, practically all of the fructose is absorbed by the liver for the purpose of cleansing, and the liver will eventually become unmanageable. Moreover, if your pancreas quits producing insulin, you will get diabetes, which cannot be cured and must be managed for the rest of your life. In addition to this, if the organs in your liver quit functioning as well, then you should prepare ready to spend eternity buried underground. This is an excerpt from the account of a biochemistry professor who enjoys a destructive hobby. Nonetheless, one of his pupils claims that these are not particularly horrible times. Now, bringing our audience members back to the matter at hand, the well-known activist against sugar Robert Lustig once said that you would never hesitate to purchase a bottle of beer for yourself. You won't offer your child a beer or a can of soda, and you won't give them a beer or a soda either, since you won't even give them a second thought about it. But either one could put you in harm's way. In recent years, I've come across an increasing number of folks who are afflicted with diabetes. Scientists are increasingly convinced that refined sugar is actually non-intoxicating alcohol. Sugar is a true representation of an invisible killer in today's modern world. Let's make it a group project and look into the history of it, shall we? Researchers at the University of Bordeaux in France conducted a study in 2007 that found sugar to be much more addictive than any other drug. These findings were published in the journal Addiction. During an experiment that involved 132 rats, the rats were given the opportunity to choose which of the two poles that the researchers had set up for them to use. If they choose a pole of ice, they would be rewarded with candies or sugar water, depending on which they preferred, and their decision would be rewarded. Once every 20 seconds, a dose of 0.25 milligrams of opium is administered. If you choose pole C, the result will be that after 15 days, 94% of the rats will choose either the candy bar or the sugar water as their reward of choice. This will occur regardless of whether you choose the candy bar or the sugar water. This conclusion is simply over the top. It would appear that over the relevant time period, a significant number of scientists were pressured to retire due to their complete inability to believe what was going on. After that, in 2008, the experiment was repeated in its entirety at Princeton University, this time with a total of 43 rats serving as participants in the investigation. The result after 15 days, if 40 rats choose sweets as their reward instead of the other option. During the course of this investigation, the researchers also utilized a technique known as resonance imaging in order to investigate the brains of rats. They found that the magnetic candies and sugar had the same impact on the brains of the rats as other addictive. In particular, the combination of these two factors causes the brain to generate dopamine, which in turn gives the rat a feeling of being stimulated. On the other hand, due to the fact that it is of this sort, it is able to consume an ever-increasing amount of sugar and sugar water. Nora Valkow, the chair of the National Institute on Drug Abuse in the United States of America, claims that sugar is even more addictive than opiates. In point of fact, it's possible that ever since we were newborns, we've had a yearning for sweets or sugar. This is because sweets and sugar are highly addictive. Dr. Eric Berg shows the sugar content of different foods in the most intuitive way. That is, we wouldn't be surprised with gummies with fruit juices and sugar-rich colas. Note that marshmallows or chewy candies are soft foam-like texture snacks in a variety of flavors and colors. But if the formula also contains half a cup of sugar, this is really too much. The World Health Organization's maximum standard for sugar intake is 0.5 g per day by body weight. Which means if your body weight is 60 kilograms, the maximum amount of sugar you can absorb is 30 grams per day, while the sugar content of soft drinks per day is 35 grams. So why add so much sugar to our food? The story behind it is like this. In 1492 in Spain, we go back a while in 1493. Christopher Columbus' fleet prepares for a second expedition to a new continent. There is a secret object revealed in the cargo. Columbus believed that this object would bring wealth to Spain. Once in the Americas. The commodity of taste is sugarcane and the secret to wealth is sucrose. At that time, European aristocrats were addicted to desserts or snacks. But the land in Europe was not suitable for growing sugarcane. Confectionery has become a luxury item in European confectionery while it is a symbol of European power and status. In the 1400s, poor countries in Europe like Portugal or even aristocrats could not afford candy. But Prince Enrique of Portugal believed that sailing eastward across Arabia would surely reach India. Buying silk and sugar tea was Portugal's only chance to turn its fortunes around. Consequently, Portugal was fortunate enough to discover the Madeira Islands on its first sailing expedition. It turns out that without having to go to India, the land of the Madeira Islands is very suitable for planting sugarcane. Then Madeira turned into a big sugar factory then. The Portuguese also invented a production model with Mobo slaves from Africa to grow sugarcane. Of course, this discovery was kept secret from the rest of Europe. Other European countries only know that Portugal has developed with many products of sucrose or cane sugar. Maybe they found India whispered by the Spaniards? Therefore, Spain asked Columbus to sail to India, but instead, Columbus discovered the American continent. While sailing in the Caribbean, Columbus soon realized that sugarcane can grown in the region. And there were no Portuguese there because Spain and Portugal produced a lot of money and has ambitions to divide the world's territory. But the basic technology of sugarcane cultivation in Spain and Portugal in the Americas by African slaves was discovered. The European powers repressed and the Dutch seized the Portuguese coast of Brazil. while Britain and France equally divided the area of the Caribbean Sea belonging to Spain. After the major powers entered the market one by one, a triangular network was formed. European industrial products were shipped to Africa and African slaves were shipped to the Americas to grow cotton and sugarcane. And then sugarcane and cotton from the Americas were brought back to Europe. Europe turns cotton into fabric and sells it to Africa and Asia, forming a perfect cycle. This is the early rise of global capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, the line is clearly the source code. Today's capitalist society is anti-road as well as anti-capitalist. But it wasn't until 1155 that someone accidentally touched the butt of a pregnant tigress. Figurative of the great ruler. 1955 United States. In 1955, the President of the United States, Dwight David Eisenhower, suffered a heart attack. At the same time, after World War II, the rate of heart disease in the United States also increased sharply. People panicked and started questioning the government about what caused it. Heart disease. At that time, the scientists divided into two factions, the school scientists and big. According to vaccine experts, too much sugar in foods causes heart disease, while fat scientists believe that excess fat is the cause. Heart disease, however. It didn't take long for the scientists of the fat faction to kneel before the scientists of the sugar faction. When people start to stop using or consuming sugar, the road capitalists also out. Will they look to Hill Knowlton's strategies? Specifically a public relations consultant based in New York, USA, to face crises like tobacco and butter? Of course not. Just so you know, sugar capital, these are the slave leaders who fought and killed 500 years ago. Their understanding of money is very irrational. In short, the word money can even bring them to their knees, meaning that money is everything. The famous professor and cell Benjamin Keyes at the time was polished as a fat scientist, then elevated him to the throne of scientific supremacy. Professor and cell Benjamin Keyes, 1943-2004, an American physiologist studying the effects of diet on health. Professor Keyes said fat causes obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and a number of other health problems. Professor Keyes said it was advisable to say no to fat and consume lots of sugar. But you can't talk nonsense, there must be a scientific basis, so that the research of the 7 famous countries emerged. Professor Keyes leads global research in 22 countries. The results of his research concluded a table of the relationship between fat intake and heart disease. The horizontal axis is the percentage of fat in the country's diet, and the vertical axis is the number of deaths from heart disease per 100,000 people in that country. It is clear that data from 22 countries is not relevant. But when he published his paper, Professor Keyes suddenly changed his study of 22 countries to a study of 7 countries. He selects only 7 relevant points and creates the image. Just watch how the more fat you eat, the quicker you enter another world. Sugar capital is really strong. Sugar capitalists are very pleased with this image. And the Department of Public Health quickly adopted Professor Keyes' ideas, issuing the first dietary guidelines in American history. People should avoid consuming as much saturated fat as possible. Then advertising, movies, and public relations refer to each other. In short, the culprit is fat. If you don't eat sweets, it will be good. In 1161, Professor Keyes became editor of Science Times. Now who is the opponent who dares to challenge him? A brave man appears. It is John Yudkin. He is a leading nutritionist in the UK. According to him, the incidence of heart disease and its association with sugar is much higher than with fat. Since then he has also specially written a book called Sweet and Dangerous, much of the evidence used in that book to show the dangers of sugar, but was unanimously opposed by academia. When John wants to argue again, scholars agree against him. You are just a science fiction writer. No matter what John will say, scholars will immediately say that he is a beef seller. And since then John's reputation has been ruined. Until 2016, the American Medical Association revealed the scandal around this time. It turns out that not only Professor Keyes, but also at least 3 top Harvard nutritionists have been helping the sugar capitalists. 2 of the 3 men later became the founders of Harvard's Department of Nutrition, Frederick, and senior administrators of the United States Department of Agriculture. They are the successor to the teacher's key when the sugar scam can't last their back. Increase calorie banner. They say 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories, 1 gram of sugar is 4 calories. Calories are a major cause of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Eat less, exercise more, and calories are balanced, so you will be healthy and slim, so eating more calories, less sugar is much better. Then naive people begin to pout, that is, playing sports, dieting to lose weight. But why is there still so much fat under the former US president headed by Barack Obama? 1 in 5 American adults is obese. Nutritionists believe that the cause is inactivity. No need to blame others again. But in 2016, academics chose to side with science. The poisoning, the addiction, and the history of these shocking stories are finally revealed one by one. But sugar capital has ruled the earth for nearly 600 years and is unlikely to collapse anytime soon. There will always be more sugar in our food because they always have an advantage. Give up sweets or sugar, but you can't either. In fact, the amount of sugar you eat is 4 times more than you think is everywhere, and sugar is highly addictive. More than 10 years ago, a biochemistry teacher asked her students to take a survey. Those who claimed to drink only 1 soft drink per week were later found to have consumed at least 5 soft drinks per week. For 3 weeks, statistic tracking what is sugar and what changes have happened in our body. What is sugar? The story goes like this: the 1 end circle is called glucose and the 2 end circle is called fructose. These very small circles can swim freely in the blood to power cells. The combination of 2 glucoses under pressure is called maltose. The combination of glucose and fructose is called sucrose. This large group of glucose is called starch or starchy starch that can provide sugar for the body. Industrially refined sugar, mainly in the form of sucrose and fructose syrup, are the 2 weapons the sugar capitalists rely on to conquer the world. Thus, our body will store glucose and fructose. After eating, glucose will enter the bloodstream, through the small intestine, and spread throughout the body. Every cell in the body, we have the ability to use glucose. If the cell energy is not enough, then glucose in the blood will be taken to burn. But before taking glucose, you have to get approval from the big boss. The main organ's role is insulin. If suddenly there is a large amount of glucose in the blood, insulin stores it in the body's stores or organs. These stores in turn are called glycogen, liver cells, and muscle. But the limited space in the warehouse can only store 7 or 8 hours. After detonating the warehouse, insulin took them to the bushes and stored them. Fructose, unlike glucose, processes a lot of fructose before our bodies are purified. Fructose can only be considered a poison and is sent to the liver for processing. When a large amount of fructose attacks the liver, it will lose control. And fructose will eventually become a small portion of glucose and most of the fat. This metabolism is almost identical to that of alcohol. This is why scientists say that fructose is a non-intoxicating alcohol. If you consume a lot of fructose for a long time, you will quickly get fatty liver and big belly. In a documentary, men consumed 160 g of refined sugar per day for 60 consecutive days. Her figure changed, her waist increased by 10 centimeters and her weight increased by 8.5 kilograms. Almost contained foie gras, then he started to stop consuming sugar. But he says that as if he hears every cell in his body roar, he becomes depressed and negatively sensitive or gets angry easily when doing any activity. Except for sipping a glass of happy water, i.e. sugary water, the problem is that it will temporarily stop. But it also means drinking more happy water next time. He said that sugar addiction is a lot harder than quitting smoking. If you see dietary guidelines recommending you eat more vegetables and limiting your daily fruit intake to about 250 grams, that should be the most recent version of the conscience guidelines. Although several years have passed, few dare to say that there is a problem with fructose under the reputation of sugar capital. Fruit is also high in fructose, so don't expect eating fruit and drinking juice to lose weight. Maybe you feel ravenously hungry every day, feel sick all over your body, you will even gain weight by drinking again and again, until you finally have foie gras. Zombies in the body. Proteins in the human body can be glycated by glucose and fructose. These glycated zombies are called AGEs, the end products of advanced glycation. Can damage DNA that needs to be repaired later, and the repair process is prone to failure if repaired incorrectly and can turn cells into cancer. That's why age causes cancer. It's also the main cause of inflammation and aging. Therefore, these beautiful and persistent women do not eat sweets or sugar at all, not because they are afraid of fat, but because they are afraid of acne or aging. If it ages in large quantities in the blood vessels, it will produce a large amount of high blood pressure and coronary diseases in the brain, namely Alzheimer's disease and depression. Those years won't go away with new protein, but beauties know that the skin's new collagen will regenerate itself at least 1 in 10 times. Some scientists have calculated that for every mole or liter, or 1 millimole per liter of average blood sugar in the body increases, at first glance a person looks 5 months older. As for how to fight aging so that you stay young, this is another biochemical story. That's all for this video. Don't forget to like, comments, and subscribe so you can provide more information.